It's dark and it's rich and it pulls you in. And if you're a fan of the supernatural genre or vampire movies or horror, then you're going to be drawn towards this.
What first drew me towards Age of the Living Dead was the story and the idea of bringing a new spin on the modern vampire tale. Myself and Simon Phillips are huge sci-fi fans, but even bigger fans of the vampire genre in general. So we decided we wanted to bring our own kind of spin to it and introduce a kind of new dystopian element to vampirism.
So we have four main narrative threads in the story, or four like big locations, I suppose. The first is where the vampires live. They're all on the East Coast in New York, and the second is Los Angeles on the West Coast, but that's for all the humans. Then there's a sort of no man's land in the middle where no side should be, and yet we have a very secret military base, and that's where what's left of the human resistance, or the militia, is currently hiding out, waiting to stage an attack on the vampires. And the fourth thread happens in London, which is kind of representative of the whole world, watching with bated breath to see what happens inside America, because what happens there kind of determines the next step of what the global community have to do to be honest, to maintain quarantine.
Both sides are kind of plotting for the future, and each side knows that it probably won't last, so they're kind of getting ready to take out the other one.
The humans will see that as an act of war.
We are at war. This isn't peace, this is simply a stalemate. It's a time for both sides to rally their forces.
Vampires and humans have found a way to sort of coexist inside America. Basically, the vampires have come to an agreement with the humans called the Bloody Sunday Agreement, whereby they won't attack the remaining humans that are alive in exchange for weekly blood donations. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship between the vampires and the humans, because the vampires can't afford to lose their livestock, as it were, and the humans can't afford to get wiped out from the vampires. So it kind of works for everybody, but it's a very delicate, fragile piece, and one that's probably going to be broken in the course of our story by both sides.
I need some help!
He has to survive. Save our son! Save our son!
The lead is played by Nicola Posner, a very talented actress I've worked with several times before in England, and she plays Yvonne, who's kind of a half-breed vampire who encompasses all of the strengths of vampires and none of their weaknesses. Nicola Posner is a great actress who brings a great vulnerability to the role of Yvonne, which is good because she combines it with this sort of quiet strength, so you know that still waters run deep with her.
So I play a character called Yvonne. She is a vampire, and she is from a very prestigious family of vampires known as the Purebloods. And so she is slightly different from everyone else. She is almost a hybrid. It's not made clear from the very beginning. And as you go through the episodes, you start to notice the differences, and almost that Yvonne has this almost human connection, this conscience that really sets her apart from everyone else.
I cannot be part of this world. I'm sorry.
Adam, my character, he's the son of Jerry, who's basically like the leader of the resistance or the militia, if you will, in no man's land. And so my character's kind of, he's 17, 18, and he's kind of caught up in the whole thing. It's all he's ever known. Once Yvonne pops on the scene, kind of changes my world a little bit.
Welcome to the Haven.
Eve Marrow plays the character of Marie, who later becomes Marta in Age of the Living Dead, and she's someone who I've worked with before on a few things, and one thing you can say about Eve is she's strong. She's a strong lady, she's strong-willed, she's a strong actress, and she certainly brings that to the role of Marta.
When my character starts off, she's Marie. She is the loving wife of Jerry, who is played by Simon Phillips, and something happened in the course of the show where her life is taken in the vampires. She became a vampire.
What drives my character in the show? I think it's a sense of family and sort of protecting my son. I lost my wife, Marie, played by Eve Marrow, and that had a sort of crippling effect on me as a person, I suppose, in that I had to be overprotective of my son, Adam, who's played by Everett Moss. The only way I can really do that is kind of winning the war against the vampires in some fashion. So it makes me kind of ruthless in one sense, but only because I'm so overprotective and so shell-shocked from losing my wife so early on in the story.
Out there in the desert, I need to feed. It'll consume me. I would rather die than do that.
After Christopher Jolly had completed the scripts, myself and Paul went through quite extensive storyboarding for the scenes, and we showed those storyboards to our Los Angeles producer, Deji Leray, and he basically delivered everything we asked for. So literally there are some scenes that look exactly like we storyboarded them 3 months ago.
Launch.
Gina Farino as President Margaret Robinson. She's someone who we'd not worked with before, but when she turned up on set and we worked with her, I thought she was great. It's great to have her in the show in a position of power. It's nice to kind of do that thing where, I think we all would have liked a lady to be president right now, so it's nice that at least in our universe we can have that happening.
I was drawn to the project because it was 6 episodes, 300 and whatever pages, and I just read it. It just was a page turner, and it had plot twists and surprises that I wasn't expecting, and it just really moved. And playing President of the United States, I couldn't really resist.
In a little less than a week, either this nation will finally be free of the vampire virus, and we'll be able to step back out into the world, or there won't be a future for any of us. Either way, I have to see it through.
My first impression of the script when I first read it was, wow. Just wow. I got the script, got all 6 episodes at one time, so it was probably about 300 and something pages. And so I sat down and I read it, and it just felt like a huge cinematic movie. It's a television series, but the concept of it is really, really big. One scene that I liked a lot was when I went to visit the president at her house.
I want you to try to contact London.
But Sears...
Sears is lying. We've still got advanced telecommunications. We may be ignored, but we are heard. They wouldn't risk not knowing.
How do you know that?
Because I wouldn't. Too much at stake.
Well, people have tried, but they've fallen on deaf ears.
That's because we're trying to speak to the wrong people.
I'll try.
Thank you.
Sex, blood, and vampires. I think one of the unique things that this show has going for it is, unlike some of the other, all the multitude of other vampire undead shows, I think that this one is unique because we actually follow 2 storylines. You have the vampire storyline, and then you have the humans storyline. And as what audiences will eventually find once they start watching the show, it boils down from this massive, global battle between humans and vampires. But it really boils down to the same thing that makes every story unique: fighting for what you believe in and love, and finding empathy. And ultimately, I think the story boils down to the battle between 2 men over a singular woman and their families, and what we won't do for those that we love.
Anna Nightingale, like a few of the others, someone I've worked with before, always worked with people that you know and like, and she plays Sheena in the show, who's one of the British characters. So she kind of sums up almost the outside world's conscience when it comes to what's going on inside of America. She kind of pushes back against the British Prime Minister and against Peter Barrett's character of Matthew, both of whom are a bit more interested in the security of the world rather than the inhabitants of America.
This is...
Forget the introductions. I can't say I'm impressed with the fact that this government has been lying to its people.
Yes, I don't see the need for any introductions.
Exactly. Then it's not just this government, is it?
Peter Barrett as Matthew, another one of the British characters. Peter is also someone I've worked with before, great actor, always brings a lot of ideas to the role, and just, gives you brilliant performances every time. Sean Spawning plays Max. He's someone who was great to work with. He really brought a lot of ideas to the character in terms of the look and costume and that kind of thing. It's always nice when actors kind of bring a little bit of themselves and make that kind of preparation. And he's great in the role as Max. I don't want to give too much away, but there's kind of a dark turn for him, which Sean was great at. And I know he enjoyed the action scenes with Simon Phillips.
So it's fun to see how these characters keep going and compare it to your normal life and see, how you have to cope in the world and what you need to do to keep going as well.
Our family has evolved from lurking in the shadows to a new status quo.
Bill Obrist Jr. is a familiar face to many people on American television, and Bill is the head of the vampire elders, and he certainly brings a lot of authority and sort of quiet, aged wisdom to the role. You certainly believe that he's someone who probably is a couple of 100 years old. David Hayden was great as the British Prime Minister, sort of young David Cameron style Prime Minister, someone who's got the weight of the world on his shoulders almost, but is trying to do his best to walk that tightrope between what's best for the security of the world and what will actually be beneficial for the residents of the United States of America.
Oh, let's see what other choice we have, Jerry.
I know. Let's just remember not to leave Lucky alone in a room with them.
There's a lot going on. There's action, there's, you know, a really human storyline. You have a lot of people who are trying to rectify sins in their past and trying to deal with trauma that has happened to them. So people can really kind of hook in on an emotional level. And, you know, vampires are sexy. They've always been sexy, so it's got the sex appeal vibe. You know, it's a really well-rounded show, and I think it's going to draw in a really diverse crowd.
My favorite scene in the show, I think, is got to be one of the scenes between Adam and Yvonne. They have this weird sort of Romeo and Juliet story going on all the time, obviously, and there's a scene where she's in jail and he comes to break her out. He kind of risks everything to break her out. And we learn kind of at that moment that Yvonne isn't actually a prisoner, or Yvonne could have broke out any time she wanted to, but she wanted to remain a prisoner kind of because she was sort of having early feelings for Adam. So there's this sort of tenderness and care with her, because if she's close to Adam, I guess she can protect him. And that kind of comes over. And the reason I like it so much is that I know both Everett and Nicola sort of personally, and watch them doing the show. They are actually like that in real life. They do actually have a genuine caring and a genuine tenderness to each other, not just as a characters, but as actors. And that kind of translates wonderfully, I think, on the screen. There's a real genuine sort of relationship there between them, you know, sort of very professional and very stuff, but there is actually genuine care there.
I think an audience would really love this show just because so much happens, especially at the end of each episode. They are such strong cliffhangers, and you instantly connect with all the characters that you just have to find out what happens next.
When people tune into the show, they'll be getting a love story, they'll be getting action, there's romance, there's politics, there's intrigue, and ultimately there's just a great story about people and the choices they make.
You know, the truth or goodness or whatever, you know, really ultimately lies in between. So I think that that's one of the things that we deal with on this show, is that there isn't really a good guys and bad guys. It's just a matter of perspective, you know, of whose side you're really on and what wouldn't you do?
A show full of pretty rich, deep characters in a whole load of different settings. And the thing is here is you're not really sure who to root for. Everybody's got a very good point of view. And I think that's number one when making characters in general. You have to believe in what you're doing, even if you're doing the wrong things. So you usually have a good reason to do it. So that for me is literally a story full of people doing the right thing, maybe for the wrong reason.